I saved a girl's life and was rewarded with xcapade I've never been able to top. Part 12. Her dress pushed her TTS together so well the line barely fell between them at all. Whoa, you could shelve a load of books on those things, Jake said. I nearly did a spit take at Tony's smirking reply of yeah, or a load of something else. Her laugh was nearly a cackle at our astonished response. What, you were all thinking it? She shrugged. Haha, guilty, I said. Yep, right, no more stalling, said Jake, I need a drink. Straight away I took the shot, and then as I slowly licked the salt from Tony's thigh, she squirmed a bit on the chocolate brown leather. Then I put my face between her cleavage and deftly took the lime in my teeth. Once I'd spit it onto the table, I sat back and whispered in Tony's ear, I'm gonna have my tongue so much higher later. She agreed with a high-pitched voice, clearly biting her lip in frustration. After a clear of her throat she said it was my turn to spin. When I spun it, I went a bit hard and it nearly flew off the table. Teetering in the edge it landed on Tony, who picked a grateful Jake to lick the salt off a blushing Emily's forearm and then like the lime put her mouth. It was then round 5 of 8, and when Jake span it landed in himself, who after a bit of arguing and finally agreement that he couldn't just pick himself agreed that Tony could take the next shot. Once she'd taken the shot, she licked the salt off my neck and took the lime off my mouth, but she spit it out almost immediately and came back for more, pushing me back in my seat. It was a while before we finally came up for air, and we only did because we were interrupted by an exasperated Emily shouting, "Oi! Are we still playing or not?" Then, Tony's spin landed on Emily, who seemed lost in thought for a minute and stared at Jake. Then she spoke. "Jake? Yeah? You are going to pick up this shot glass with your mouth from between my thighs." She shuffled back and placed the glass where I couldn't see. Jake exhaled heavily, saying yeah? "And then you are going to lick this salt," she continued, pulled down her top to reveal some modest put very perky looking cleavage. "Sprinkle some on there, from my TTS, Emily," Tony scolded, but with a grin. Emily rolled her eyes and continued. "And the lime goes right here." She finished and placed the lime in her teeth with a smile and a cheeky eyebrows raise. "Absolutely, my lady." Jake responded and quickly got to work. Emily shivered when he had his face between her breasts, and Jake gave her a cheeky wink when he was done with lime. She was panting heavily by the time she was done, and when Jake's spin of the bottle turned its way to me, I took it on myself to reward Jake for being the consummate wingman. "Emily, you're going to pick up the shot from Jake, who will lean back and hold the glass in his teeth. Then, you're going to lick the salt from his abs. Then, Jake is going to shimmy down his trousers and you pick up the lime wedge, which will be balanced on boxers atop his little Irish soldier." "Wow," Tony said. "Ha, it'll be more like an Irish tank if she does all that," Jake replied. We all laughed, though Emily had turned red. "Fine," she said, with determined bravado, "but you've got to lick his abs and put the lime there." She smirked at me like she'd got one over on me. "Emily, I've carried Jake back to his flat naked after he passed out intoxicated in the woods near the Villa Martin golf course, covered in mud and God knows what, cleaned him up and put him to bed. Thanks again for that, by the way," Jake added. "No worries," I said, flashing a grin. "Fiend," Emily said, who didn't look like she was complaining too hard about it. I had the salt and lime in position in seconds and Emily got to work. Both her face and neck were flushed when she came up with the lime slice. "Took a while down there, did you?" I commented with a cheeky smile. She spat the slice out and snapped. Back he moved his legs to it fell between his legs and you carried on with just your mouth. "What a trooper," Jake said, laughing. "F you." Emily replied and punched him on the arm, but she was grinning anyway. For the final round Emily span and it landed on Tony. Jake spoke up before she made her choice. "It's only Josh left in the last one, it needs to be a special one." Tony was clearly a little worked up from watching Emily's antics, and chewed the corner of her lip before she said, "I'm gonna pour the shot into my mouth, spit it into your mouth, then, you're going to lick the salt off of my nipple, and then come back to my mouth for the lime. You're going to get it out right here?" Emily exclaimed. "Unless anyone objects?" There was an instant chorus of no from the boys at the table. The girls giggled. Tony, with a quick glance around to make sure there was no one else around, reached into her top and pulled out one glorious boob. "Damn," Jake said. "Yep," I agreed. "I'm so jealous," Emily said, folding her arms. "Yeah, but I could bounce a euro off your SS," Jake said. Emily blushed at the compliment and said, "Thanks." All the while I couldn't keep my eyes off Tony, who had finished putting salt on a delicious-looking pale pink nipple that was already crinkled with excitement and was taking the tequila into her mouth. She smiled and nodded, and I brought my mouth to hers. After drinking the tequila, I wasted no time locking my mouth around not just the erect nipple but getting as much of her breast in as possible. I swirled my tongue across it madly as I sucked, and Tony was visibly panting by the time I'd kissed the lime from her mouth. She let out a long exhale when I'd finished and ran her hand through her long, honey-colored hair. She looked deep into my eyes, and smiled at me with a mixture of lust and wonder and took my hand in hers. The night was becoming so much fun and definitely one we would never forget. But it was time to move on. Looking at my phone, it was 11 p.m. and her parents were coming back at 1:30. With the disco finishing at midnight, I looked around to ask Emily and Jake if they wanted another drink, but they were firmly locked at the lips. Jake began to kiss down her neck and Emily looked up at me, and when she realized both Tony and I were both watching, she gently pushed him away. "Better?" Tony asked, laughing. "Yeah, much," her cousin replied, joining in. We agreed to one last drink at the bar and a last dance. Jake said he wanted to go for a walk on the beach with Emily afterwards. Spirits were high after our last round of drinks, and it wasn't long before we were dancing in a circle among the colored lights, people and pumping tunes. At one point we made a circle and were taking it in turns to dance in a circle. Jake did the worm, and I did the worst slut drop anyone had ever seen, which had everyone dying with laughter. Then, Tony and Emily were dancing together, rubbing up on each other while looking lustfully at Jake and I. It was going so well until this rat-face looking creep got up close and copped a feel of Emily's ass.